Welcome to Bad Accent, the podcast about language, identity, and the messy beauty of how they shape us. I'm Sophia, and in each episode, we explore how multilingual creatives and professionals navigate the world one accent at a time. So grab your coffee or tea and let's get talking.
I'm João, and today we are kicking things off with a special guest, Jari Asselman, a Flemish and Aalstenaar illustrator, graphic storyteller, and author based in Aalst, Belgium. His work is full of personality, playfulness, and a cultural reference that reflects his Flemish roots. Jari is an author of many strips, beeldverhalen, so comics, for newspapers like Vrij Nederlands and Standaard de Letteren and Manus. Or his new book, Gniffelen in het blauw. So we are going to dive into his creative process and the role language that plays in his creative work. So welcome, Jari.
Thank you for the very nice introduction. It's a good one. I'm glad to hear that. It's all, I don't have to add more to it. So
no, you have a very strong introduction in our.
You prepared it well. Good job.
All the rights reserved.
And today we're actually meeting online to record this episode. João is based in Senef and Jari in Aalst, both in Belgium. And myself, Sophia, I'm based in Rennes in France. Wishing I could be also over there on the Belgium side.
Yes.
Maybe we can see a way that we can start moving this podcast geographically and physically, and meeting up in real life. Yeah. So we wanted to kick it off with just something very basic question. Sure. What language do you speak? And how does it shape the way you think or create in your day-to-day life?
Well, my mother tongue is Dutch, the Belgian variant of it. So we often call it Flemish, but in fact, it's not really a language. It's regional, a variation of the Dutch language. But yeah, that's my mother tongue. And English, I just learned when I was a child, just pure out of curiosity and passion, I think, and a lot of video games and television. That's how that came. And I know some French, but I'm not good at my French.
And you might also believe that you can understand German.
German it's easier to read it personally than when I hear it. It's easier when I can get a textbook and then I see the words and I can say, oh, this sentence probably means this and this sentence probably means that. But more importantly, a better one is to say Afrikaans. It's the daughter language of the Dutch language, and they speak it in South Africa.
Yeah.
If I see that written, I just understand 70-80%, sometimes even more. Okay. Spoken, it's way more difficult to hear that language, but written, it's just like reading a dialect of the Dutch language. It does feel like that to me.
Yeah, because Dutch has many variations of dialects. In Africa, might have another dialect.
Came from Holland, the language of Amsterdam and Rotterdam. Many West Flemish people also went to South Africa back, in those colonial days.
Yeah. Okay.
So we were talking about, a long time ago, but it's interesting too because they still speak it there, so it's something unusual but also very interesting.
Yeah, I wanted to actually, because you mentioned video games and TV shows. Do you feel like that really influenced the way you speak English today? Was that something that maybe you were like very connected to as a child, for example, and then it helped you grow into the language more?
Yeah, I think that it was easier to learn English through certain video games because you had to interact with with the game. You interact with it, and so in a playful way, while having fun, you're learning words one by one. Simple sentences, sometimes more complicated ones, but you keep on learning it, and you want to figure out, oh, what does this mean? Or you have a quest in some game and you have to find an object and you see maybe an image of it and then a name with it, and then you learn it, and you don't really focus on learning. So it's in a very fun, relaxing way that you picking up new words, new sentences, and all of those things. And even the way of talking, you can kind of try to copy how they speak in a video game. For television, it was just, oh, I see this, it's a nice movie, it looks good, and it's kind of passive learning, I think. You're not really actively learning, but you do it passively, and you just enjoy the process of it.
Yeah.
I feel it's something like that. But yeah, video games, they influenced me as a child a lot. Yeah, I loved playing them, and for me, it was a way of sometimes escaping the world. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like that.
I think the next question can somehow answer what you are just mentioning now. Now that our listeners knows that you are a graphic storyteller, so we wanted to ask you, in what ways does your Flemish heritage influence your artistic and visual storytelling?
Let me for starters, many of the characters' names I try to keep them as Flemish as possible, or at least something related to my location, which is Aalst is actually known for having a very peculiar or a very interesting dialect. Even amongst Flanders, it's one of the weird ones popping out. So there's often sh sound we have in our dialect. Many sentences and many words are with the sh. As a result, I started adding characters having similar names. Gniffelen and blauw, which those who don't understand Dutch, it means laughing or chuckling. I think it's more like chuckling in blue. But it translates weirdly, but it's also maybe a weird title. But
Yeah, you said that
most
actually.
it's mostly about a visualization of something, about an emotion, not really something literal to be taken.
Yeah, we actually
Your research.
translated the title, and we found something like jiggle in the blue. I thought it was so beautiful and so expressive at the same time. Just the title itself speaks, super interesting that you
Yeah,
chose that title. Yeah.
the title is I wanted to express not through what literally was in the book, but more through what kind of emotion you might find it in the book. Comedy is a big part of it, but it's also a whole situation that is kind of a depressing one at times or a sad book. Everything is I deal with everything with comedy and fun. So that's kind of the feeling that I had for the book or what I was going for. But that title is just pure, Dutch language. It has no dialect in it. It's just something you can easily translate. I would say the main character, he's a writer who has a writer's block and he stays in bed. It's called Patrice, and the I added it. I wanted a name like that. It was a reference to my hometown, Aalst. Maybe for them they might not notice because it's not a common name. I think it's more of a French name actually, like Patrice maybe or
Hmm.
something like
Yeah,
that.
it's
Yeah,
common here in
Yeah,
France.
but I made it a bit. I wrote it in a way that it's more Dutch looking or Flemish looking,
yeah.
just
Hmm.
to make it fit in or make it more give that feeling that I like. And I also love many words and sentences. I sometimes like to spell a French word more like a Dutch word, change the how it's
Hmm.
written or the spelling, just change it up a little bit. Fits more in my language, or it looks for most people it will look funny, but it's intentional. It's very intentional. There's also this little character that I called Potebolletjes or Potebolleke. They are these little hairy cat-like creatures on walking on two legs, but it translates to Poot is like a paw or like a small leg of an animal, maybe, and Bol is a ball. Bolleke, if you say it like that, it's like a small ball. But the ke is also something very only for Flanders, and
Mhm.
because Dutch people would rather say bolletje. It's a way of making a word smaller, but in Flanders we often go for ke, and we add ke for many things, and it's a way to make it cuter, to make it sound a bit. Someone from the Netherlands would read it and they see potebolleke, they would say, probably someone from Flanders who came up with it, not someone from the Netherlands. They can immediately tell, I feel, because it's just something they would never really like. The k is just something they don't naturally use. What I try to do in my book is keep a sense of the identity, the way of
Mhm.
speaking. I combine literary language. I read a lot and I like to keep my sentences written out very well, but I love to add now and then these dialect words or these very regional things we have in Belgium, because I want to tell the reader, oh, maybe you can guess where I'm from, or maybe you can. I don't want to hide my identity, or it's not because I'm extremely proud of it, but I will never be able to completely hide it. So people will always be able to tell, oh, he's from Belgium, oh, he's from Flanders, okay.
Yeah, and as you're mentioning, I mean, you mentioned so many things about identity, humor, literature, and we can really see that through your work. And actually, when we were, starting to prepare the script to the podcast, of course, João knows you a bit more than myself.
Mhm.
So he was, explaining the way you worked, and he mentioned that you actually use a dictionary, an old Flemish dictionary, to look up words. And I instantly thought about, the Dada movement in the 20s, in the 20th century.
Yes, I'm
So I
aware.
was like, did he think about that when he was doing it? Is it a link to the past as well, and not only like the Flemish past, but also to this movement in time? And how do you also mix it up with the sense of humor, because the Dada movement was also very humoristic and sarcastic?
I've never thought about intentionally thinking, for this book at least and other works, I usually don't think about the Dada movement. However, in the past, I can say that for poems, because sometimes I write poetry and very short stories, but I like to make them rhyme or add always a comedic effect to it. But I am heavily influenced by Flemish Belgian Dadaist who did. He wrote poetry. He's called Paul van Ostaaien. He wrote many of these Dada works, and he combined German, English, French, but the
Mm-hmm.
main language was always Dutch. But he was a very special figure, and he's someone many Flemish people have to learn about at school. So it's a bit part of the education for most people. Most people had to read one of his poems. But when you're a teenager, you don't really understand or get what the hell it's
Mm.
going, what it's about, because
Yeah.
it's Dada. So many things
Yeah.
just don't make any sense, or it's only to make an image or a feeling. Most likely influenced me, and sometimes I did read his works actively and said, "Oh, I like what he's doing." And what he did was what many Dadaists did back then, and that was to play with not only the poem, the content of it, I think the context and the sentences and whatever, but they also played with the size of the text. So a word can be
Mm-hmm.
suddenly extremely big, and then you see a smaller one, and they play with the size of the text and sometimes turn it around. So they filled the page, and they always looked like a poster, almost like a very
Yeah.
graphic design thing. They were a art piece on their own. So instead of just being a poem to read, it was also something to look at. I especially found one thing interesting, and that was the idea of the automatic writing. I often
Mm-hmm.
kept that idea in my mind, the automatic writing concept. They often use that, Dadaists, and I think Surrealists also used it for a while.
Yeah, surrealists
The
use it,
Yeah,
a lot. Yeah, definitely.
it-
Yeah.
It was this thing where they were also, of course, we need to understand what was happening at the time, the industrialization of the world. So all the machines were, starting to work in this industry, right? And the artists also felt that need of not kind of become machines, but kind of like accelerate the way they would work, and also they would protest against it. So there was this automatic writing, like just write everything that comes into your
Mhm.
mind and just like blurt it on a piece of
Yeah.
paper, for example.
It was interesting what Yari was mentioned about this translation of text to image. I wanted also to ask Yari about if you ever found it difficult to translate your visual ideas in your native language to another language. Do you find it difficult to translate sometimes? Have you ever experienced that?
Yeah, especially when you want to be funny and you have a certain joke in mind, it's a play on words and it doesn't translate well in English or any other language, then you kind of have the feeling of, oh, okay, it doesn't really work. It's not really funny anymore. And
Yeah.
then you have this kind of feeling of, oh no, oh, that's not good. And you have to try to come up with something else. But comedy is one of the most difficult things to translate. Comedy
Mm.
and poetry. Poetry is also, if something rhymes and you have to try to translate something that is rhyming, uh,
Yeah.
it's incredibly difficult.
No, yeah, definitely. I feel like it's difficult to translate because it's connected to feelings, to emotions. So that's something very particular to each country as well. I mean, we obviously have universal feelings, but there are things that are specific to each country. And so it's felt or dealt with differently. So I feel that that's why it becomes kind of difficult to translate humor or
Yeah.
poetry, as you mentioned, because it's so deep. We feel it differently. And there are certain words that are so difficult sometimes to translate. But do you feel like there's a word or expression doesn't really have a real equivalent in other languages, but that really inspires your work?
Ooh.
That you
I,
constantly want to use somehow.
mm, I love to use the what I mentioned earlier, the protobolicus. I love to use k at a lot of words, and I love to use it with many names. When it comes to English, there is no such thing, and it's something for me that always adds flavor. It makes something so much fun for me. But what I also just wanted to do was, Belgium is multilingual. We have French speakers and Dutch speakers. Joao lives in Wallonie, in Wallonia, where they speak French, while I live in Flanders, where they speak Dutch. And
Mm-hmm.
in Brussels, the two worlds come together, and we also have this eastern part where they speak German. But what I like to do was include a little bit of the French part too, because if I can make, sometimes I wanted to create this blend between the two worlds, and that's why I sometimes include French words or try to make those French words sound more Flemish. So it ends up becoming something very Belgian to me when I turn the French sentences a bit more like Dutch ones. Suddenly it becomes something, I would say, Belgian, something only coming from out of Belgian, Belgian people, from the Belgian folk, or I don't know, something that is very Belgium. I would say Belgian, Belgium. It's confusing to say Belgian, Belgian person, and the country Belgium. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it sounds the same.
You are saying that because of the division that exists, it would be nice to make something like Belgium, not Belgium Flemish, not Belgium French, but
Yeah,
Belgium. Yeah.
yeah, something that is uniquely belonging to the identity that we can have as Belgians, because most of us kind of develop a identity that is based purely on Flanders or purely focused on Wallonia. Well, internationally we would say, "Oh, I'm just a Belgian," but locally we will very easily say, "Oh, you're from this part, so I expect kind of these things from you," or you will most likely know this dialect, or maybe you will not like me because I'm from this part and you're from that part.
Yeah.
And some people then, get along very well, but some people are also. I have met many Flemish people who do not like Wallonie or Wallonia that much. So now
Yeah.
we're getting into the politics, but
That's
in
okay.
Belgium, it's kind of language, culture, and how things go is it is political at many times. It is kind of politics, but I did a lot of research to both sides about. I did research not only about Flanders but also Wallonia, and there are many. We have a lot in common, so much, but we are often so kind of, because we don't understand each other, we don't speak the same language. We often are a bit like ostriches and put our heads into the sand or the ground, and we do not really interact that well. But most of us eat the same food, or we know the same music. I know that there is Sinterklaas in
Mhm.
Flanders, but he also exists just in Wallonie. He's just there too, so they know the same things. They have the same Catholic heritage, because Belgium is historically Catholic a long time.
Mhm.
Not many are Catholic anymore, but what I'm trying to say is that many of these celebrations and how things are built, churches and the styles and the architecture, and even in art it goes beyond language, I feel. If we would say, I would say that even in Wallonie you can find Dutch words, Flemish words. For example, you have a student dormitory, but they will also use kot for it. Like a Flemish person would, they would say kot. In Brussels, I've seen that many times, and it's a Flemish word. So even if they are not really always, speaking the language, or we are not speaking their language, still at times we get in touch somehow, and it's always linked. Even if people deny it at times, there is a connection between the two groups, and a lot more in common than people might say. Or I mean, I have a friend who's from Wallonia, and we get along just fine. There's nothing really, there's no culture shock. We just understand each other the same. It's just the language that is a little bit different. I communicate using English, but I wouldn't say that the people are so different there. We are still the same, maybe
Mhm.
shy Belgians. We are not a loud people. I feel we are a bit timide. I don't know how
Yeah,
I translate that.
shy,
Yeah,
timid.
but
Yeah.
yeah, we keep things to ourselves, and we don't really bother people on the street. We are very to each to their own. So it doesn't matter what language you speak. Everyone kind of has this same vibe or feeling to them, at least how I experience it. French people often come across as different to me. I just feel that. And I also feel Dutch people are just a bit more. They're a bit louder, for me at least, a bit more open, a bit more direct, a bit more that they speak their minds.
It's interesting that you basically, Yari, you are talking about somehow difference between cultures, and that they exist for sure. We wanted also to know if you find it a challenge working with the Belgium audience versus international one. If there is a big difference, let's say, because here we are only talk until now local, but international one might also exist a big difference.
I'm still figuring out the
Yeah.
international audience. It has been already challenging to just get the entirety of Belgium with me, because I haven't been able to reach the south yet. So Wallonia, I haven't
Mm.
really been catching them with me yet, but I have been catching people from the Netherlands. They have been interested in my works. For example, like the introduction mentioned Vrij Nederland. That's a magazine from the Netherlands, so they are interested. But recently, I've been trying to do my communication in English, because there's this feeling of, oh, things are growing, maybe, well, slowly but steadily, and there's this urgency, or the feeling of, oh, Flanders is getting smaller. As you grow, it starts becoming smaller and smaller, and you have to search, especially when you're talking about art, and you don't have that many people who are very interested in. I mean, many are interested in art, but I mean, you have 7 million people, and from that 7 million people, maybe you have maybe 100,000 people who really are into it, or maybe 10,000. I'm not sure how big the amount is, but it's not a giant amount, I would say. When I post something on Instagram or on Facebook, I try to include English, and then offer a Dutch language translation because not everyone in Flanders knows English, so I have to keep that in mind. So as a result, I try to write both of them because yeah, many older people, they know French better than English, while the younger generation knows English way better, but their French is less good. So I have to kind of make a compromise or make a way of, when it's really necessary, I have to make a translation. I want to add about illustration that a fun part of illustration is when there is no text. That means that people can all across the globe, they can just understand by reading the image. It does not require text. So illustration is in a way language too for me. And in my book that has been published now, Gniffelen blauw, it has been a language and the image. These two, personally, they always have to strengthen each other so that you cannot look at the images separately without the text. You need the text to for the images to really work. I made it that way. So it's always very intentional and deliberate, but the goal is always communicating. You have to communicate something. Illustration is communication, cartoons are communication,
Yeah.
and of course the book is all communication. It's
Yeah.
people have to be able to read it, and if they cannot, then you have a problem. But
Yeah.
I myself want to create things that people can understand.
And Jari, I remember that you mentioned also that your book is available also in the Netherlands. What do you think? How people will think about your book as a Flemish Dutch, but in the Netherlands? So it's also a kind of a interesting point for you as an author, as a storyteller. At some point, are you not afraid that of misinterpretations from your book or illustrations, because there is somehow some linguistic difference, right?
Well, many of the sentences are still rather standard Dutch, or like a little bit older Dutch, but the Flemish elements are often limited to words, just
Mhm.
one word in a sentence. And at times, maybe some Dutch people will not understand it, but I think most of them will understand it. But they will know that it's from Flanders, someone Flemish did that, or someone Belgian did it.
Yeah.
They will most likely find it funny or cute. For many Dutch people, when they read Flemish things, they often say, "Oh, we find it kind of cute. It's kind of a sweet thing to read." They kind of find it like it's different, and they find it a little bit. Well, I can say that at least one person from the Netherlands already read it, and that was the editor. Actually, is from the Netherlands, and
Okay.
um, so she checked everything and she understood the whole story. At least it has been the communication did work. But of course, she did say like, "Oh, many of these are new words too. I can understand them based on the sentence." She could fill in the blanks, like,
Yes, but that's what
uh,
I found very interesting, that you somehow you bring up the somehow Belgium, like what is Belgium, how we define ourselves, like linguistically. In this case, in your case, both linguistic and as a storyteller and author.
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about, of course, identity, humor, languages, heritage. Funny how you say, that you haven't gotten the chance to maybe connect with a certain part of audience in your own country. Maybe this is also due to the language or any other factors. And that you say also that in social media, of course, you started noticing people, get interested in your work, and that you have adapt to English. Of course, as you grow as an artist and as you get publications out there and you start getting more known in the world, have you thought maybe adapting your stories or your publications to a wider audience? In a sense, maybe, as you said, you initially connect text with illustrations, but maybe just use illustrations as a common universal language? Is that something that you've been thinking about as you start to, feel that you want to connect with a more international audience? And of course, sometimes it'd be difficult to translate the Flemish or your humor.
Well, I love writing my own mother language, my own mother tongue. I prefer that, but I would say that I wouldn't mind being involved in a translation, Gniffelen blauw, so I could reach a broader audience. But sure, I have been trying to find ways to reach audiences, and I would say I wouldn't mind translations, but I don't know if I would really say I want to write in English now or do that switch. Maybe I could try it, but I'm also somewhat afraid maybe will I lose myself if I have to write in English? Suddenly, maybe I will not be able to express myself how I can
Mm-hmm.
as how I can express myself right now. And that's a scary thing of this feeling of maybe I will lose something of myself. Something will get lost in this crazy translations and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
The translation doesn't have to be perfect, I would say. Even for my own works, I could translate them myself to English, but somehow I still have the feeling, oh, if it's about a book, I would still love to have a translator with me to advise me along the way. Maybe someone who is from England and who knows the Dutch language, so I could communicate and express my ideas. I can write in English, but culturally I'm not English or American, or I will never have that same kind of expression like how they have it, because they hear it every day, the language, by native speakers who have their own accents, dialects. It's all natural there, and they understand those inside jokes. But I
Mm-hmm.
don't have those little jokes, I will not understand that. I will always understand English more on a practical level, maybe. I will not really get it. Maybe I would say like a piano, and you miss a few of those keys, and they are these keys that you can only have when you're born really into the language, into an area full of these native speakers with their comedy, with because language carries culture. I learn English from television, video games, and all that, but that's not really learning it from a real, culture with all of these people around you, and the warmth maybe, and the comedy, and the older people who also have their own type of their ways of talking, and it's all interesting to hear and know. But of course I miss those pieces.
You are talking about this translation and somehow talking about our own mother language, and somehow being comfortable with speaking with who we are. Maybe you have like a story or a joke in your mother tongue that, yeah, you wish whole world could understand.
Hmm. So that's a difficult one.
No
um,
Or
pressure.
like a proverb or phrase.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh, I will need a minute for that. But there is one word that has been always a struggle for translators too, and that's the word gezellig. Is one of the most
Mm.
difficult Dutch language words for English speakers, for anyone in the world, because gezellig literally translates to cozy. But we can say enter a room and you say, "Oh, so gezellig," and it means like, "Oh, it's so cozy," but that's not it doesn't cover the meaning.
No.
You talk to someone and you say, "Oh, het is zo gezellig om met je te praten." So you say, "Oh, it's so cozy to talk to you," but that doesn't work. Suddenly it changes the meaning again. So it's this word with many meanings, and it's feeling you have, but it just doesn't translate to English or any other language. It's a bit like the Portuguese word. How do you
Saudade.
saudade? Yeah, or
Saudade. Yes, for
saudade.
sure.
Yeah, that's a language a word that you cannot really. It just doesn't work. It's too
No.
difficult to to translate. And gezellig is this similar word that we use regularly, but we cannot really just translating it. You will have to make a choice, but it will never I cannot describe it, but the feeling is never the same. You hear it, but you're like to translate it, and in English you bring it to a sentence, but it just doesn't sound the same. It doesn't feel the same. It's not right, and it's so difficult to explain.
Yeah, the feeling is so strong that
Mm,
there are no words to describe it, because it's something that it's within you. You're born, I mean, you're raised with that feeling or that
mhm,
word, and it's part of your identity.
yeah,
That's why also like saudade, it's so difficult to
Yeah.
translate,
mhm.
because within you, it's part of who we are as Portuguese, that maybe no one else feels.
It
Yari,
that
you are going
mm,
on to add something else?
yeah. Actually, I was trying to, and maybe some. There's a proverb I love to use in Dutch, but I think it exists probably in other languages too. Spreken is silver, zwijgen is goud. It just means talking is silver, being quiet is gold. I like that one, but it's just a bit
Uh,
weird to translate. But I think it exists in other languages too. Just there is the one that is often an inside joke with Flemish people. We often say, literally translate to English, make that a cat wise, but it means make that a cat wijs. But
Yeah.
that one, it just doesn't translate. So it tried to convince a cat of this idea you're talking about. It's like, oh, what are you trying to tell me?
Yes.
This is just silly. It's like, this is just bullshit, maybe, or it's a bit. What are you talking about? Or you could say that to a scammer, maybe say, "Oh, my God, a cat wijs," because it's like this crap story you come with, and people just say, no, we're not buying it.
Mhm.
So that's how I interpreted it. It's something that I very visually imagine this whole situation with a cat,
Yeah.
and it's just so funny to say, but I don't know. It's just fun. It's a lot of
Yari, thank
yeah.
you so much for sharing your thoughts with us and
You're
with your
welcome.
humor, with
yeah,
your it's fascinating to see how identity, heritage, and language are not just present, but they are involved in your work. So
definitely.
yeah.
It's been an amazing pleasure to share with you and to learn more, especially because, well, I didn't know a lot about the Flemish culture and identity. Just having this perspective from a contemporary person that also plays with heritage
Yes.
and identity and language, it's been super interesting. And as a foreigner seeing your work, I don't have to sometimes understand Flemish, but I can see it.
I
Yeah.
love that. I often
So
don't hear the outside perspective, so it's always very fascinating to me to still be able to hear, oh, but I understand it even without. So that's nice. It makes me happy, to hear that. And I'm also very happy to be here. No, to have been on this podcast is also a pleasure. So, thank you.
and to our listeners as well, thank you for being here. You can definitely follow Yari's work on Instagram, and then you'll be able to access all his work links. We're going to leave them on the description of this episode. If you enjoyed this conversation, follow Bad Accent on Instagram and LinkedIn for more multilingual stories. And remember, own your voice, celebrate your accent.